On the Capitol, there were Trump banners and Confederate flags, the Gadsden flags. There's also Christian imagery, the wooden cross, people in prayer, the Jesus Saves slogan. Now, much of the House January 6th, during the January 6th attack on the Capitol, there were Trump banners and Confederate flags, the Gadsden flags. There's also Christian imagery, the wooden cross, people in prayer, the Jesus Saves slogan. Now, much of the House January 6th committee's focus so far has been on right-wing extremist groups, but there are Americans who have adopted Christian nationalism who were there as well. Samuel Perry is an associate professor at the University of Oklahoma and a co-author of The Flag and the Cross, White Christian Nationalism and the Threat to American Democracy. Professor, good to have you. Part of the reason we're having this conversation is because Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene just said that the Republican Party should become the Christian Nationalist Party. We'll get into that in a moment. But first, what is it? What is Christian nationalism?
Sure. Christian nationalism is an ideology that seeks to idealize and advocate for a fusion of American civic life with a very particular kind of Christianity. And when we say Christianity, we don't really mean people who love Jesus, who have tried to, live Christ-like lives. We mean Christianity is code word for people like us, who are conservative, natural-born citizens who think like us, who look like us. And so Christian nationalism is really this ideology that seeks to fuse and institutionalize that kind of Christianity with American policy and symbols and founding myths and our kind of deep story.
When the book says white Christian nationalism, is it almost exclusively based on race? Explain that element.
Sure. We find in all of our studies that where we're looking at these things with national survey data, we find that when white Americans hear the language of Christian nationalism, when they hear that about Christian heritage and Christian values, they tend to think with nostalgia for a time where people like us, the right kind of people, had cultural and political influence. When, say, people of color, African Americans, for example, hear Christian nationalist language, they often think more aspirationally for in terms of accountability, the kind of nation that we've never quite lived up to our own values. And so we call white Christian nationalism this ideology that seeks to take back America for all lack of a better phrasing, white, ethnically white, racially white, traditional conservative Americans. Again, people like us, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks.
Yeah. Now, there are some even in the Republican Party who would say that some of Congresswoman Greene's views are fringe. This, though, you say, is not, that this is central. This is very mainstream.
Yes, we find in survey after survey that the kinds of beliefs that Marjorie Taylor Greene affirms, that we would be proud Christian nationalists, that the Republican Party ought to be the party of Christian nationalism. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene may seem fringe in the fact that she is so outspoken and so blatant about this, but this is actually a very common ideology that Americans believe that America was founded on biblical principles, that Christianity made us prosperous as a nation, that we ought to not only celebrate that path, but we ought to return to it. We ought to institutionalize Christianity as our national identity. We ought to make policy in light of it. And we ought to really privilege Christianity in the public square above other religions, and we don't have to give equal time. We don't even have to recognize other religions as much as we do Christianity.
Obviously, a natural segue into why the second half of that title is the threat to democracy. How do you then confront it? Because it sounds like, as encompassing as the white Christian nationalist identity is, that it's not just confronting religion, it's confronting privilege, it's confronting one's view of oneself. Steve, how do you confront something like that?
Right, and you said it exactly right. I think this is an ideology that is fundamentally us versus them. It is not about maximizing space for everybody else. It does not celebrate diversity in any kind of form, and it really takes the idea that this nation is for people like us, and we ought to have primary say, primary influence, and it is fundamentally anti-democratic in that regard. It is not for voter access. It is very much against maximizing democratic opportunity for everybody else. So how do we confront it? We have to return to our democratic principles, our idea that this is a society that celebrates legal equality and access to the vote, that we will not privilege one religious group over the other, that we don't have established religions in this country. That is a fundamentally un-American idea. And so I think it requires those of us who are concerned about this white Christian nationalist movement to link arms, to unite with one another, both as those of us who are people of faith, those of us who are not people of faith, but are at the same time very worried about this ideology, have to unite and say, this is not who we are as Americans, and this is not what we're about. That includes Republicans as well as Democrats.
And you genuinely think in this political landscape that would be impactful?
I think that's the only choice that we have is to speak truth to this kind of movement, to say, this may not be fringe in the sense that not a lot of people hold it. I mean, it's not, and I'm not talking necessarily about the majority of Americans who are white Christian nationalists. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that very vocal and influential group of people who are now becoming more radicalized and militant, to say that we can push our agenda now and this is the time, and they mobilize their base with this kind of angry and fearful rhetoric. It is to speak back to them and say, this is un-American. This is not what conservatives are about. This is not what Republicans are about. I hope they believe that. I hope they affirm that this is a nation where religious liberty and religious diversity and racial and ethnic diversity are celebrated, valued. We want those things to be our ideals. And so I think it requires us to link arms and to I think unite against this movement.
All right, Professor Sam Perry, I thank you so much, sir.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
All right. So there we go. And he's wrong when he says that this is not what conservatives believe, this is not what Republicans believe, blah, blah, blah. Because we've been living under the thumb and the yoke of Christianity since jokers showed up from Europe. So they not only brought all of their cultural things, with them, they also shipped their religion over here, too. So this has been a problem since the beginning of this country. And they use religion to justify slavery. And so now they're terrified that somebody's going to come over here, just going to show up over here one day and, treat them the same way. Decide we're stronger than you, so this is the life that you're finna live right now. And put them shackles, on them. Not understanding that they have already been caught through religion and capitalism. So they actually don't need to put shackles, on you at this point. Anyway, just something to continue to think about. I was thinking about David and Uriah and the service. And I've talked about this, before. But the service that Uriah gave to David. And David was willing to just let Uriah be killed because he wanted his wife. When David had what? David had more wives than he could shake a stick at. But it was still important for him to have this woman and let his friend be cast away. And the other thing that kind of hit me here too is that David actually had the law. So the law of the Lord at that time and the commandments, let's go to one of them because, they match. Or if he wants me to go to both of them, I don't care. So Exodus 20. Come on, phone. Exodus 20. And let's look at the verses. So this is 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It's the last one. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Very clear. You want me to go to Deuteronomy? Let's go. Let's go. Nope, not the right one. Deuteronomy 5. Okay. So here we go. Deuteronomy 5, verse 21. Neither shalt thou desire thy neighbor's wife, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's house, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything, and this is in italics, or anything that is, I think is in italics too, thy neighbor's. And so, without even all of the stuff that we have to worry about today, there was so much stuff going on around David and inside of him that commandment actually just flew out of his head. If the Holy Spirit came and talked to him about it, he was like, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but this is what, we finna do today. Opportunity showed up, and now, okay, I got a chance to get rid of this joker and not have it blow back on me. But it blew back on him. We're still talking about it right now. So you imagine trying to adhere to God's word, even if you love him. And David loved the Lord. And the Lord loved David because he was able to tell and accept the truth. So when he sent Naaman over to go, or Nathan, I think it was Nathan. Thank you for the correction. When he sent Nathan over to go and tell David, about his sin, David was like, oh my goodness. The Lord finna strike me down dead. I have sinned against the Lord. There it is. And see, that's the kind of realization that today's Christians don't want to come to. They don't want to admit and see that they're sinning egregiously, against the Lord, what he taught. So they're just doubling down. They see an opportunity to get whatever it is that they want, and they're going to take it. No matter what it does to the future of the country, what it does to the future of their families, and what it does for the future, of God's kingdom. They don't care about that. They only, the focus is, what do I need? What do my family need? What do people that think like me need? And that's it. That's not what Jesus did. That's not the example that he set for us. And I'm never going to take white Christians, seriously. Ever, 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 ever. So I got another video that I'm going to play. I don't think I'm going to do as much commentary, on that one. But thank you for your time and attention. And until the next video.